All right. Good afternoon, Texas Tech, and more specifically, Professor Brunette. My name is Prince Ranson. I'm going to be going over a presentation with you on AT&T's employee engagement case study. I specifically chose this case study for a few different reasons. One, as a family member of AT&T, I was actually affected by this case study. In late 2025, our CEO, John Stankey, initiated a return to office initiative that really affected a lot of us employees who worked from home. In this presentation, I'm going to be talking to you a little bit about what led to that decision, a lot of the reaction that came about in the company, and even some in the media as well, because there was a lot of publicity that this memo that got sent out from our awesome CEO, John Stankey. So I really hope you enjoy. Let's dive into it. So again, I just want to kind of cover some of the context and the background of this case study. So what triggered this? During the COVID window, a lot of us were working from home. In fact, the vast majority of us were working from home, aside from retail employees and some field sales experts. So in that, of course, some people kind of got comfortable. Some people moved into different parts of the country, away from our headquarters markets. And the return to the work from home was, of course, to combat a lot of the COVID response, or the COVID spread, I should say. So a lot of people working from home. And then in late 2025, this huge message came out. This was triggered because not a lot of employees ended up responding to the employee survey that gets sent out once a year. And it was eye-opening for me, right? Because in my mind, I'm thinking, they don't even look at these things. What does my opinion matter? Well, our CEO actually does read these things, and his response was specific to that. So the message occurred during a significant organizational change and needed to connect employee expectations with long-term strategy. Of course, this is a competitive marketplace that we work in now. Me personally, I work on the mobility side with AT&T, so I provide mobility solutions to small businesses and sometimes some medium to large businesses. And having people in one place that you can connect with, it's important. Being able to go one floor up and work with the pricing team, or being able to go one floor down and work with the marketing team. These kind of things are important. During that time, a lot of things were getting done over Teams, and a lot of communication strategy just kind of went down the tubes. I'm being completely honest about that. In the CEO's response, it explained a lot of the major decisions behind the company's next steps. So the biggest part behind John Stankey's initiative was to reconnect employees. Of course, it was never a long-term strategy to have employees working in just different parts of the country. Along with that, there was a lot of pushback from employees during this return to work, because some people had bought homes in different parts of the country. Some people had moved far away from headquarters market, and some smaller markets. Some people, as well moved around. So a lot of things changed because that carryover from COVID actually kind of carried on for quite a while. That was never a long-term strategy though. So who needed to hear the message? Employees. And what were they reacting to? Survey results, and change how concerns were addressed through acknowledgement and explanation. What outcome was intended? Better clarity and alignment. That was John Stankey's full intention behind his message to the employees. I would read the full memo to you, but it's quite long, quite extensive, and for some people it might come off as quite offensive. I know for me it did for a little bit. But the reality is, it was meant to get us back into the office. And the amount of productivity that our departments have seen since we've been back in office is huge. Honestly, there's never been anything like it. So going into some of the communication methods that was used, this came across in a couple different ways. It only went to management employees. And then it was up to us management employees to then translate the message to our teams. When it initially came to us, of course, his entire message came from what management employees were saying. Me personally, I didn't respond to the survey. I probably should have, but at least I know whenever he got back to us that it wasn't talking about me. But the message came off quite aggressive. And it was kind of along the lines of, hey, you know what? If you don't want to return to the office, this isn't the place to work for you. And sometimes hearing that kind of message from, senior leadership or high level leadership That can be a little bit uncomfortable. And it will start to make you rethink things. But of course, I go back to that. It was never a long-term strategy to keep people working from home. Connecting major decisions to the company's broader strategy, creating context and difficult changes, that was the entire thing, right? We have to be able to simultaneously work with other departments and get to accomplish the company's goals. The effectiveness behind this. So just kind of like a little bit of background, like the CEO's message gave employees a direct leadership perspective during a time of change. There was a lot of things happening, not just in the economy, but in social construct. Everything was changing during COVID, but even coming outside of that COVID window, everything was different, right? And I feel like, 4 years later, we're kind of getting to a more unified version now of what COVID was before. But of course, everything changed. Nothing was the same. And leadership credibility strengthens when employees understand what will happen next and how feedback will continue and how it's used. So what I mean by that, right, is just having that understanding from leadership is pivotal. You got to have it. In fact, if you don't have it, everything goes down the tubes. All right, so what's the impact of the outcome and the clarity? So before the message, lower engagement than expected. Questions about direction, concerns about change. Before, after, right? I'm kind of standing over here like the weatherman. It looks really cool, but hey, you know what? More context around leadership decisions, a clear explanation of company direction, a stronger link between employees' feedback and next steps, better alignment between expectations and strategy. So me working in leadership, it's something that I've learned in this class is that the way we communicate with our peers and our subordinates is important. And as a leader, I have 15 sales experts that work under my chain. I notice whenever I'm not communicating, productivity is down. The team's not engaged, they're not responding. It's a real thing. So having that message come from our chain, high up in our chain of command, it is important. And as a matter of fact, it was time to get back to work. Everybody's going back to work. We got to go back to work too. We can't sit at home and work from home forever. Everything goes down the tubes when that happens. All right. And then impact and outcome in the culture and expectations. I can tell you when we returned to the office at HQ, 211 South Akron Boulevard, when we returned to office, it was like a welcome party. About a week into it, it was so awesome. And now, whenever I do work from home, whether it be for an illness or anything, I feel completely out of pocket. I feel so out of place, it's ridiculous. Everything just goes down the tubes. I promise you that. My dog's running around, I want to play with him. I just don't get as near as much done. And I'm the type of person, right? I want to get as much work done as I possibly can. Company culture, it connected employees' feedback to the culture and moved towards performance-based environment. We work in a competitive landscape. AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, T-Mobile, and like the other 90 carriers that exist in the United States today. In fact, there's probably more than that. It's all going down the tubes. But we work in a very competitive environment. It's super important, right, that we stay competitive. And we have this performance-based environment. Even when I worked on the operations side, even on operations where you're just working on sales support, you are still, within AT&T, you are still held to some type of a metric. It's insane. But that allows us to elevate. I have seen over the last several years, my stock prices with AT&T going up, my retirement's going up. Everything is good, it's not in the tubes, and that's what you want. Okay, what are some of the lessons learned, right? For one, don't take messages negative all the time. Just don't do that, right? Open by naming the concern or feedback clearly, employees feel heard. At the end of the day, people gave a message to the company and he responded. People said, hey, we don't really want to return to work. Here's this thing. We like working from home. I've already bought a house over here. No one told you to do that, okay? Nobody ever told you to do that. And unfortunately, you do have to return back to the office, okay? Separation strategy from communication. Keep business strategy clear, but organize the message around employee understanding. I'm getting a call right now. I'm just going to ignore that. Explain the reason behind the change. Employees are more likely to accept change when leadership explains why the decisions are being made. I take that into account because now, and that's one thing that my leaders have told me, my direct reports, or my direct leaders have told me, when I'm talking to my direct reports, I need to explain the why. I'm the type of person, you give me information, I'm gonna try and dissect it and figure out what you're trying to get across. Not everybody's like that. Some people need to understand the why. And I'm learning that when you have those type of people, which actually there's more of them than there's more people like me, explaining the why. Here's the reason why we're going this direction, and here's how we're gonna do it. It actually comes across as support rather than just random direction. So it's super important to have that. And as a leader, I'm kind of, spending time learning that now. So during organizational change, leadership communications matter most when acknowledged concerns, explains decision, and gives employees a clear path forward. I literally just said that. And that's because it's the truth, right? I only say the truth. Case study findings. AT&T's message served as an example of executive communication used to guide employee understanding after engagement feedback. Again, I'll just go back to it. Just because the message isn't what we wanted to hear doesn't mean that it was the right message. But the company's productivity, the stock price, customer happiness, it's all gone up since we went back to the office. And I'm telling you, I love going down there. I don't like to drive so much, but I love going down there. All right, just some references for this presentation, right? My name is Prince Ranson. I am an associate director for field sales in the Dallas, Texas market. A lot of this came from my personal experience. Again, I've been with AT&T for 13 years. I was a part of that initiative. I was told I was going to be returning to office. I wasn't happy about it, but hey, I'm very happy about it now. And pre-approval for this message was given by my leadership. So I hope that this kind of gave you some context as to why I chose this case study from a personal perspective, right? Not just from a means of saying, hey, here's this random thing I want to talk about. This was something that personally I was invested in, okay? I was personally invested in this. So it's important that I give my perspective and that you understand the why. So thank you very much, Professor Burnett. I've really enjoyed this class. I would highly appreciate a strong A in this assignment. I put a lot of work into it. And you know what? If I don't get an A, this whole thing goes down the tube. So thank you so much. We'll talk to you again soon.